If you and I look at what makes us uncomfortable, that discomfort will show us where attachment lives. It could be things or ideas. Today, with the help of Mary Stancavage, we look at the should, as in, I should be like this, or I should be like that. Hi, it's Margaret Maloney, and welcome to Season 3 of the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so appreciative that you are part of my community. And yet, I seek not to be attached to the idea of the podcast, or even to the idea of our community. And that's our topic this season: attachment, clinging, and aversion. What happens when we really want something? What happens when we really don't want something? And what does it do to our suffering and dissatisfaction? Let's dive in and find out a little bit more with today's episode. We cling to the ideas of self. We cling to relationships because they are our identity, even when it's not necessarily good or healthy, because we are afraid of the alternative. Who am I if I am not this carefully constructed self that I have created and that I present to the world? Join me in this lovely discussion with Mary Stancavage as she walks us through how she learned to let go of one of her carefully constructed versions of herself. My friends, I am happy to say today that Mary Stancavage has returned to us. And some of you are going to remember her from season 1, where she was so honest with her sharing about experiencing death and grief in different stages in her life and in different ways in which she was living her life. I'm not going to say more than that, because if you don't know, you can go back and find it on season 1. It will be worth your time. And on that note, hi, Mary, and thanks so much for coming back to us.
Oh, thank you so much, Margaret. It's really an honor to be here. It's like, it's always that extra special treat when you do something and then they invite you back. It's like, oh, yay!
I felt the same way. I thought, well, now, will she come back? And so, on both ends. And maybe you would like to just reintroduce yourself and tell all of us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Again, Mary Stancavage. I live in Burbank in the Los Angeles area. I have been teaching meditation and Dharma. I've been empowered to teach Buddha Dharma, and I've been doing that for probably 14 or so years. And before that, I did a multitude of things. I was an archaeologist. I worked at Xerox for 20 years, so I was in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. I'm from New York City. I moved to California at 18, and I landed in LA when I came down to go to UCLA for graduate school.
Ah, beautiful. And then we've kept you ever since.
Exactly. I married a local, and he's like, I like New York, but I'm not living there. And I'm like, okay, so we'll stay here.
Right. You're like, well, I like you better than New York, and we can visit. We can visit New York City once in a while, so you can experience both. So that's perfect. And you know that season 3, we're talking about attachment, translating it to clinging and aversion. Mm-hmm. And I know that you have brought something for us today to talk about. And so let's hear about that.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to think about this because, when I first think about the idea of attachment, things like Marie Kondo come to mind, where we're attached to stuff. Mm-hmm. And in fact, last year I did I live in this little old house, so there's little closets, but I'm really organized, so I packed it up really well, and I excavated the closet, and it's just extraordinary how much stuff is in there. But I was finally willing to let it go. Except it's sitting in the corner right over here. I can see it. I moved it from the closet to the dining room.
Okay. So it's on the way out.
It's on the way out. It's on the way. I'm trying to get it onto Buy Nothing. So I can, if you're familiar with Buy Nothing, that group, you put things that you're getting rid of on the Facebook page or website, and people say, I want that, and then you give it away. But I've been lazy, and I'm just getting around to, I think, just taking it to the thrift store. Anyway, so that's what I normally think of as attachment and how hard it is to let go of old books. But really, what is much more painful, I have found, especially in my Buddhist practice in this uncovering and going deeper of where is my discomfort? Is my attachment to ideas, particularly my attachment to ideas of self and how I need you to see me, my self-view. I grew up, I probably mentioned it in the first time we spoke about my father passed when I was 5, and then I grew up with a mom all by myself. It was just the two of us, and she was mentally ill. And so navigating that world, I developed a means of taking care of myself. I mean, it wasn't conscious because I was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, but it was like, how do I operate in the world? And so I had developed these patterns of thinking of like, oh, seeing those people over there and they're doing that. So that is important. I need to be able to do that. Oh, I like them, or reading about people or hearing advertising saying, this is how you should be. This is what's important. And then living in New York that in the 60s and 70s, there's that whole realm of what's happening in New York City. And then I moved to California, Northern California, and I'm like, blam, that's like polar opposite. And it's like, oh, there's new things that are important. How do I incorporate that? And so it's just this attachment to ideas of should and never.
I should be this, I should do that.
Exactly. This is what it should look like. I should be this, I should be that, or I'm not going to fit in, or I need to not say anything because I don't want them to not like me. In hindsight, it's come down to me recognizing that I wanted people to like me, so that people-pleasing thing.
Yeah.
What music do you like? Oh, I like that music too, even though I didn't or had no idea who the artist was. I couldn't admit not knowing or not doing the same because I needed you to like me. So, but that's a deep level. That's an implicit bias that I had. It's not explicit. I don't see it. And letting those go are so challenging because A, I don't know, I don't see them a lot of times. And B, they've protected me my whole life. They're how I created an operating system for myself. And how, if I letting those go, then what? So I want to tell a story about that actual experience of letting go. I mentioned that I was an archaeologist. I came to UCLA to do grad school, and I studied archaeology. And I did it for a few years, and I ended up just kind of drifting and ended up leaving the field. And I didn't get my PhD. I got my master's, and then just kind of got a job and worked for a number of years. And then about 21 years ago, in 2001, my old professor from UCLA contacted me. We had been in contact, and he said, we have a project we need help with in Syria because we excavated in Syria. We have a project we need help with this year in Syria. Would you be interested in coming and helping with this particular project? And I said, sure, because it sounded great. And I went and I had
adventure.
It was an adventure. And I'm really good at projects and getting things done. And so I went, I had a great time because I love travel. I love being in a community like that. And they said, you want to come back again? And I went, yeah. So I went back the next few years and was excavating and doing the stuff a couple of months a year. I was contracting by this time with a company. So I said, I'm taking 2 months off. And they said, fine, will you come back? And I'm like, sure. So the best of all worlds.
That is the best possible scenario.
It was extraordinary.
It was low risk.
It was very low risk.
Except for actually going to Syria.
This was before the Civil War, so it was less risky. And the Syrians are just beautiful people. They're just so hospitable and warm. It was really quite safe. And and then about 2006, I started doing A Year to Live, which I think I talked about in the last podcast. And I got to Syria. And I said, before I went, I said, if I am going to die, I want to spend all the time in Syria, finish this season, stay for they would have a post season where we worked on the material, publish something, and then have that period at the end of my, archaeological career and then die. And the first day I got to Syria, I went, if I had a year to live, I would not want to be here.
Oh.
I would want to be home with my family, with my husband, with my friends. And what it occurred to me was I was tired of doing archaeology.
Okay.
It lost its appeal. I was tired of the excavating. I was tired of the grind.
Okay.
And it was a miserable couple of months. It was miserable.
Oh, so sorry. Was there a specific thing? So, you say when you arrived, you realized, what do you recall? Like, what was the specific trigger that made you realize, like, no, this isn't really how I want to spend my time?
Okay, let's get up. We start at 5 a.m. and we work, and then we take 3 hours siesta in the afternoon, and then we work, and then we have half a Friday off. And then we work some more, and do this, do that, do that, do this, do this, and it was insane. And then we have to come home and put it. Wasn't quite bullying, but it was like, we need to get this done, kind of thing. We need to get this done because there's a finite amount of time.
There's so much. We only have this much amount of time and this amount of money in the grant, and we have to do it by.
And it's a really important site. So it's like, oh gosh, now we discovered this. Now we have to do this and add more work. And then you come home and you input it all on the computer. In 120 degrees temperature. So,
Okay. So completely comfortable.
Yeah, very
luxurious surroundings. Beautiful.
And the only air conditioning was in the computer room.
Yes, you're all fighting. Like, I'll do the computer work. No, I'll do the computer work.
Yeah, it was kind of stuffy. But anyway, so it was just recognizing this, like, I don't want to do this. But the dilemma was archaeology was cool.
Oh.
And I've never been cool in my life. And if I let go of archaeology, I won't be cool anymore.
I see what you're saying, because there's a little bit of a cachet to saying I'm an archaeologist. Indiana Jones.
I had an attachment to that image. I needed you to think I was this particular person. I was cool. Oh, she does archaeology. That's cool. And then I could go, I'm okay. And it's looking for the external validation that occupation brought me, or that avocation brought me.
Sure. So who am I if I'm not an archaeologist, and how will I establish my cred, my street cred, my coolness? I want that.
Right. Because it's an entree everywhere.
Yes.
In my mind.
Well, sure. Because, the infamous, party scenario where somebody, this is what we do in the United States. We say, what do you do? And the minute you said that, everybody would lean towards you. Because nobody else knew an archaeologist, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And where do you excavate? In Syria. What? That's exotic. Who goes to Syria?
Yes.
Nobody goes to Syria. So they had this whole cachet. And so I struggled with that. I struggled with that. And I said, I can't, this is hard to do. And I stayed because my husband was coming at the end of the season, and he was going to, and then we traveled a little bit, and then went to Europe, and then came home. And so otherwise, I don't know, I might have come home, because it was really hard to be there when you all of a sudden you have that realization of like, so I got through the season. And I got home, and then it came the next spring. We were talking about the next season planning, and I went back.
Oh, you went back the next season?
I went back for only 3 weeks, but I went back because I couldn't let go.
The inner struggle?
Yes, the inner struggle. I was so attached to that. This is who I am. And if I let these people down, what will they think of me?
People pleaser. Yeah.
Total people pleaser. I mean, to my core, because then I think it's safe. Then I'm this, then I'm that. So I had to, I went back, and I got there again, and I went, why are you here, Mary? I wrote in my journal, remember, you don't want to be here.
Oh, wow.
So I would maybe look the next season and then I left but that was it. I went. And then I had that realization about the archaeology and it's so cool. And I had friends go, my friend's an archaeologist. And I'm like, oh, I'm spreading this, yeah. So it was this attachment to my view. It was an attachment to having people see me a certain way, this self-view. It's extraordinary how painful that is. And it's so often so invisible. We don't see it. It's what drives us. It's what drives me. It has driven me, and that's just one of the ideas I have of, I'm supposed to be this, I'm supposed to be that, I'm supposed to be the other thing.
I think that's such a important and relevant story, because I'm guessing that as you're talking, I'm thinking of, something I had within myself, similar, of just like, this is who I am and how I carried it for so long. Even when I wasn't that thing anymore, I would still sometimes slip it into conversations I used to be, or I come from, and
absolutely.
And it was an interesting, I watched myself do it, and I'm like, you're trying to control how people think about you, and you want them to think of you a certain way. It's a lot of work, actually.
It's a lot of work because it's been so habituated for most of my life, unconsciously. So to bring it to the awareness and then to be able to let go and to be able to feel the discomfort, I think is really important, of letting go. And it's like, oh, because that means that there's something in myself that I feel is lacking. And that I needed this to shore up. And so now I had to deal with whatever that perceived lack was internally, and tend to that with kindness and compassion.
I think this is why so as humans, we may cling to situations, relationships, etc., that no longer support us. Absolutely. Because it's our identity. Which, if we really look at some of that, it's very difficult when we see ourselves or someone we care about in a harmful situation, but they're afraid to leave it.
Yeah, there's so much fear involved. I mean, I stayed at a job way longer than I should have. I would wake up in the morning and think I'd rather kill myself than go to work, and not realize that was like, take a look here.
That's a red flag, right?
It's a red flag here.
Right. And then you think, I can make it till Friday.
I'm not a quitter. I can't be a quitter. I can't be that person.
Yes, that quitting, that responsibility, that's what will others think? Will I be letting people down? All these things. So what helped you? So, at the end of three weeks, the second season, 3 weeks in, you said, that's it. You came home. And then you worked with these feelings. And so what is something that helped you to release all of that?
Well, when I went back to that last season, I only planned to be there 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
I didn't just walk. I wasn't going to just walk off in the middle of the season, because that would leave everybody in the lurch. So I said, I can come, but only for 3 weeks. So I was weaning myself off.
I see. Okay.
Because I didn't want to go, but I couldn't quite let go. And I guess it was like it's a very long way to go for a reminder that you don't want to be somewhere. And I just had to walk away. And then I have FOMO too, fear of missing out. What they're having fun without me, and that.
And they're going to find something. I'm going to be home, and they're going to find something.
All those things. So
yes,
I do have a postscript to this story. I have 2 postscripts.
Beautiful.
So the first postscript is, it was a few years later. I was doing this writing workshop with this amazing woman, Beth Lapidus, and we would write like a piece, like a 5-10-minute piece, and stand in front of the group and read it, and then she would give us feedback, really excellent feedback. And there was this one part, I was writing something and I was talking about being an archaeologist and being cool, and blah, 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 kind of what I was just talking about. And after the end, and she gave me feedback, and then she says, it's so funny what you think is cool. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, archaeology. I said, it is cool. And she's like, not in my world. And I went,
oh, what?
What?
Say it isn't so.
What? It's just like,
why is it, and why? I'm just curious, like, why is it not cool? She didn't like Indiana Jones?
I didn't even ask. I was just flabbergasted. And so that was a huge lesson about how, I tend to universalize everything. Well, if I think it, then everybody, and obviously that's not true. But that was another chipping away at that attachment. I just thought that was priceless. And an important recognition of, just because I think it doesn't mean it's real. It's only in my mind. Obviously, a lot of people say, oh, that's so cool, but it's not a universal idea.
Right. Like, you got enough reinforcement. And I've been guilty of that, of assuming that because I think something, so do others. Yeah, I have found myself doing that.
Yeah. So it's, it was just mind-boggling, and I carry that. It's like I carry them in two different pockets. So,
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
eventually we run out of pockets.
Yeah. Oh, this jacket has actually pockets on the inside too. So.
Oh, well, okay then.
Lots of pockets, cargo pants, but anyway, and then the other postscript, which is, and then because it was Syria, and then they had the civil war, I think it started in 2010, everything's done. I mean, nobody's doing anything in Syria right now. So that took that whole thing out of the mix. A couple of years ago, I got a call or an email from my old professor. This professor I've had since 1979. They're working on the material from the excavations, and he's created a website, and we're digitizing everything and coding it and getting it into this extraordinary website. And would I be interested in working on that? Well, first he asked me to help edit a volume of articles that we wrote back in 2004. Wow. And I said, sure. And then the pandemic hit. And so I've become involved in archaeology again. So you're supposed to say now, wow, that's cool.
That is so cool. Actually, and what I think is really interesting is that I'm getting this impression that it's allowing you to participate in something that is still part of you in a way that fits your current life and needs. Is that fair to say?
Perfect. That's beautiful. Thank you, Margaret. That's absolutely perfect. Yeah, because there's no field work. It's taking the material from 50 years of their work. We have a little lab at UCLA, and it's going down there, and I'm really good at organizing, and so helping to get this material in a format that it needs to be. And so it's fun. It's sometimes I go, why am I doing this? But I don't think there's any job that's 100% joyful. There's always the struggle in somewhere, some part of it. Right. And so, but it's not overarching. It's like, this is annoying, but this is also really interesting and fun.
So generally, the joy is outweighing any of the drudgery or any of that.
Exactly.
Because I think you're right. Like in any activity, there can be a piece that's like, well, I don't love that piece, but it supports the overall arc of what is making me happy and bringing me joy.
Exactly.
I love that.
Thanks.
So Mary, the archaeologist, we let go of kind of, but a piece of her has always lived on, and she has come back. The rebirth, I'll call it a rebirth. She has been reborn. That might be a silly way to say it. She's come back in a way that you can participate without maybe attaching to what you felt when you were, first an archaeologist. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly. I started it originally because I really enjoy it. I find it fascinating and interesting, and that's why I'm still doing it. And it's no longer attached to my persona. I don't have this view of I need to have this in my life in order for people to like me or think of me in a certain way. There's a sense of, and my relationship to my old professor is very different now. I'm much more aware. I don't have to do everything. It's like, can you do this? And I'm like, I can't do that. This is much, I can do this, or I can say no. So I'm less of a people pleaser. I'm more of a collaborator.
There you go.
Or a colleague. So, which feels much better.
I bet.
Of course.
I bet, because there's not that anxiety of, there's a lot of absence of anxiety of, I don't really want to be doing this. Who am I if I don't do this?
Exactly.
Am I going to let these people down? Now you're just setting clear boundaries. Like, here's how I can help.
Exactly.
And if that's not appropriate, then you won't do it, or you won't be part of it.
Exactly.
A lesson I'm feeling from this is that we don't have to let go of all parts of who we are. We want to let go of what we perceive those parts of us create or bring. So you never had to stop being Mary the archaeologist, but it was about letting go of how you thought that what that created, the self that created. Is it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's I no longer needed that for anything. I could let go of thinking it was, the mask or the persona.
Yes.
I had when I was working years ago, I was a temp before I got hired on, and this was when I was full on people pleaser. And when I finally hired on, they gave me a nameplate that said Little Mary Sunshine.
Oh,
I still have it because I'm Little Mary Sunshine. Everything's fine. Everything's good. Yay. Which is debilitating. So I'm able to let go of those parts that are painful, that are unnecessary, cause unnecessary pain. I mean, there's pain in every life, obviously, but to let go of those things that I was doing to myself that were so painful.
And I think that's an important part of the lesson too, is so much of what we're doing when we are attaching to a persona and we're selfing is that it is also self-inflicted.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is so helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. For me, I've learned when I'm really uncomfortable, that's when I have to drop below the story, like dropping below the idea of cool, and say, what is fueling that? What's just really dive down, keep asking, what's this? What's this? What's this? That inquiry that takes you down and, gets below the surface. That's what I find most helpful, because a lot of times it has nothing to do with the story. It's underneath the feelings.
You remind me of I'm going to cross over into my business world for a minute. A tool we use sometimes, you probably know it too, called the 5 Whys. And it could be where we're doing root cause analysis, maybe on like a quality issue or something.
Right.
And so we ask why 5 times. It might be 3 times, it might be 7 times, but it's called
exactly
5 Whys.
As many as you need. Yeah,
exactly. And we can do that with our own work.
Yep. Absolutely.
So dock down and find out what is bringing this. Why is it so important for me to be cool? Why is it so important for me to make sure other people are happy or like me?
Yeah. Why am I so attached to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your own stories about attachment. So follow this link, I'm going to read it to you in a minute here, to leave me a 90-second message with your ideas and suggestions. You can go to https://www.speakpipe.com/death_Dhamma_podcast. I suppose you could also just use your favorite search engine to say SpeakPipe Death Dhamma Podcast. And there you can record an audio message for me. And be sure to come over to margaretmaloney.com. That's MargaretMeloni.com and join the community. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma Podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.